98.1 Pearl FM, televiewers on TV Carib, welcome. Welcome to the Monday morning show with Roberto Celestino Arendelle. This program is all about education. Yes, of course, with an emphasis on vocational education, but as an educator for over 35 years, I will talk about just about everything on education, even about educating the common man. Today my guests have put on many plays and different stories to tell you and educate you about our cultural aspects and activities in the educational field. There is where I met Dr. Linda Badajo Richardson. I know she doesn't carry the Badajo anymore, but Dr. Linda Badajo, Badajo, I'm accustomed to Richardson. Linda, welcome, and it is a pleasure having you here this morning. You are the former Commissioner of Education, and you have done many, many things here in St. Martin. Now, who better can introduce themselves but you? Linda, welcome.
Good morning, radio listeners, televiewers. Mr. Roberto Celestino Arendelle.
Yeah, thank you.
I've never been a Commissioner of Education.
Minister.
I've been a Minister of Education,
For the
Culture, Sports, Women Affairs of the Netherlands Antilles. So Linda Andrea Richardson was born in Aruba of parents. My mother is from Middle Region, Phillips from Middle Region, Phillips/Pantoflet, because her grandmother was a Pantoflet. And today I am, like most Anguillans, celebrating August Monday because her mother, Josephine Brooks, was from Anguilla. And then my father is the nephew of the well-known Elick the Butcher, and my father's aunt was the famous cultural icon Tontonese, the one who brought back the Punham dance. So I'm rooted in this country, although on several occasions I was told that I don't belong here because I was born here and I didn't grow up here. But I'm rooted in this country very strongly. And so I was born in Aruba, as I said. I went to school in Aruba, and then I went to Curaçao to school, and then left for Belgium to study, to become an interpreter, translator, because at the time there were no studies of such in Holland. So I was the first Antillian that was sent to Belgium to study. When I was completing my studies in Belgium, I did a research on Papiamentu, and my professor at the time was Mr. Raoul Reumer, who was a professor in Amsterdam, at the University of Amsterdam. And because of that research, I became very interested in language research. So rather than accepting a top position at the European Union office in Brussels, I went back to school and worked on my doctoral thesis, and I also studied then, besides the language I did in Belgium, I did also Portuguese and Italian. When I finished there, I went to live for a while in Spain because I had written to St. Martin and to different parts of the Netherlands Antilles at the time, and no one answered my letter. So I went to Spain, and while in Spain, the then Minister of Education, Mr. Jacques Veres, gave me a call because at the time they were organizing a teachers' conference, and that teachers' conference here in St. Martin, they wanted me to be the keynote speaker. It was about the dual language situation in St. Martin. And I laughed because I said, at that time, there's no dual language situation in St. Martin. I was very much against. But anyway, so I told them, okay, send my ticket, I'll return ticket. But Mr. Jacques Veres called me, he said, you're not going to return. I want you to come and be one of my policy advisors Apparently, he has been following me. I was very vocal at the time about mother tongue education, and he wanted me to come back to help set up the Linguistic Institute in St. Martin and be one of his right-hand people in the introduction of mother tongue education in the Netherlands Antilles. I was a strong believer of education for one and all. That is the document of UNESCO that says every child has a right to education in its mother tongue. And I've done research and I've seen the detrimental result of teaching a child in a foreign language, and especially a foreign language that a child was not familiar with, that a child did not pray in, that a child did not dream in, that a child did not talk to the mother in. As a matter of fact, I will not say that I was a victim of that education, but to some extent I was, because when I got to Holland, I never spoke one sentence in one language. I would say a piece in Papiamento, a piece in English, and a piece in Dutch.
Most of
and
us.
I thought it was normal until in Holland they were like, she's speaking Esperanto.
Right, right.
Yes, so if I'm talking to my mom about school, I would say, for example, Mother, I had a veer for geschiedenis.
Yes.
Yes, and then when I was talking to my friends, I would mix up the Dutch and the Papiamento and the English. So, and at time also a bit of Spanish, because my father was born in San Pedro Macorís in the Dominican Republic, and when he came back to St. Martin, when he met my mother, he hardly spoke English, he spoke Spanish. He's the one also who named me. People say Linda, but actually my name is Linda.
Linda, beautiful, yeah.
So when I came back, and I made a point that I do not see the reason why our children are being bridled in a foreign language, and I remember that conference was at the Methodist College, and I said that the Dutch was a dead language in my country, and that our children should get education in their own language. I was almost battled back out of St. Martin because the backlash was serious. People were upset, I had offended the Dutch, and I didn't mean to offend the Dutch, but at the time, and even now, the Dutch is not as vibrant as it should be for our children to really be grasping the true context of the Dutch. When you tell a child, you talk to a child about being in a train, for example, the child has no clue.
Yes,
when you see the child about the conductor, the child has no clue. I took my daughter Ife to Holland with me when she was 11 years old, and when I drove around with her on a train just to show her the so-called Weilanden, because she was getting Dutch as a subject, it all became clear to her. It all, suddenly everything became alive.
Yes, true.
And she became like the best student in Dutch.
Yes,
because
yes.
everything became alive. Things became alive for her, you know. But our kids didn't have that opportunity. So then I started working here. I was a lot in Curacao because I was one of the right hand of the then Minister of Education. We worked in trying to get both Papiamento in the Leeward Islands as well as English in the Windward Islands. We tried to work on the concept, how that would look like, and prepare the people also for changes in education, innovations in education, because the education system, as you know it, was totally based on the Dutch culture, Dutch system and everything like that. And 5 years after my return, I got the privilege, the honor, and the opportunity to serve my country as Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, Women Affairs, and so on. And that was because at the time, it was in the first cabinet after Aruba had left the constellation of the Netherlands Antilles, and at that time, for the first time, the Curacao politicians were no longer interested in the educational portfolio, since there were so many problems in Curacao between the very, very strong school boards and the very, very strong teachers' union. Mr. Arakova on one hand, and the Catholic school boards on the other hand. So they sent that portfolio to the island of Saba and Statia, who never before had a representative in the government. And at one point in time, Mr. Bill Johnson contacted me and asked me if I would like to serve as a minister on behalf of Saba and Statia. It's quite interesting. I had a young child that was a bit sickly, Femi. Initially I refused, but then I prayed about it. I said no. When I was a student in Holland, I always said, when I go back to my country, I must be a minister.
Okay, well, beautiful.
The power of the tongue, the power, you know. I did not think of entering any politics.
Okay.
I just had it in my head, it will happen. And so when I got that opportunity, I served to the best of my ability. I think I made a mark in that sense. But I had all kind of interesting experiences. I had the experience of the then governor of Sabre to Mr.
Wycliffe Smith at the time,
yes,
right?
at the time, who apparently was the one who was first offered a job, and he recommended me.
Okay.
To him. I went with him to St. Kitts to get materials for the kids in school in St. Kitts. Sabre was ready. Sabre had done a research. They had a committee. They had done a research, and the amount of children who were dropping out and repeating, it's like flies dropping, man. And it's so unfair to a child in the first grade to have a child repeat, and then in the second grade and the third grade, and all because the child lives in the Caribbean and does not hear the Dutch language, and we condemn them for life because of that. So they had done the research. They were already ready to accept English as language of instruction. It fitted. He knew all the time what research I used to work on, because even as a student, when I used to come to St. Martin, I was working on this research, and Mrs. Wycliffe Smith at the time was the head of the education department.
Right,
Right
there on Back Street.
Yes, right there on Back Street. So I used to come here to do my research. I was very close with him, and so he knew what I stood for, and I would argue the point that we cannot continue this. I have done the research here. I've done the research in the other islands. I've seen the children struggle, and I said, no, we have to stop the dropout rate. We have to stop we have to minimize the dropout rate. We have to minimize the repeating of a class. When you tell a child you can't go over with your friends, it's a very devastating experience for a child. And if the following year you can't go over again, it's another devastating. No child should be told that, especially at elementary school level. And our kids have been told that from the first grade, sometimes twice in the same class. Then there's something wrong. Then there's something seriously wrong with our education system. So my focus was to try and do something about that. Yes, I recognize that it was not only a language issue, but for me it was primarily the language issue, because you cannot express yourself. If you do not, you cannot think properly. Your mind is all messed up, and you don't get that reinforcement via the environment, via the radio, the TV, whatever, then you cannot make it. And yeah, that was my position all along. You might have heard of that.
No, I not only heard of that, I lived it.
You lived it?
I lived it, and the question I would ask right now is that, do you feel that you were able to accomplish your goal at that time?
I do, because one, I was the one minister who sent Papiamento to school, and the kindergarten and the first and second grade. Two, I was also the minister who signed a protocol with Sabre and got Sabre to introduce English of language instruction and see a dramatic change in the performance of the children. So I do. Three, what happened with St. Martin and Statia is quite interesting. Statia, when I walked into Statia as minister, and you must imagine at the time I was the youngest minister and the only female minister.
Okay, yeah.
I'm so interested and so happy to see so many women ministers now. By the time I was the only female minister, I was the youngest minister. And so I arrived in Statia, and at the time the then governor of Statia, Mr. Slaceweg, told me outright, don't bring your English here to Statia. Don't bring your English here to Statia. I went into an executive council meeting with a very hostile commissioners, some of whom couldn't even speak the Dutch language, but they defended the Dutch and told me that I was not welcome in Statia. But it is interesting to see that today, now that Statia is a best island, the Dutch have conducted more or less the same research that I did in the past, and the Dutch have decided English should be the language of instruction in Statia.
Right.
So the day I heard it, I really got emotional.
Because you are a forerunner for all of these things.
For all of this,
Yeah.
and I've seen it, and it takes the Dutch people to say, hey guys, wait, what you doing here with these kids? I said it, you know. And again, I've said in St. Martin too, I signed a protocol with the government of St. Martin at the time. Even here in St. Martin, there were several people in education who were very against what I was doing, very, and so I made a compromise with the government of St. Martin. Let us establish a committee that will research to see if we can be a bilingual country. The committee was never established. And I said at the time that I was signing that protocol, you cannot turn back the clock. In a few years from now, there will be more children in St. Martin getting education in the English language and in the Dutch language. Today, that is the case. If you check on all the schools at St. Martin, you will see that there are more children receiving education in the English language and the Dutch language. And as I said at the time, I am not waging a war against Dutch. I'm fighting for the rights to education of my people and of the children of St. Martin that will really get hampered with the whole Dutch system.
And I had a vivid experience because many students were failing in the classroom. And when I went to do my master's thesis, I did it trying to find out what the problem was. And the outcome was that because of how the system was set up, students neither knew English nor Dutch. So regardless of whether they made the test in Dutch or English, they would fail because you know how the system was then. They had a pilot scheme that started teaching the students in English the first 3 years, and then they automatically switched over, and that was supposed to be a pilot scheme.
Yes.
And it ended up being
The
the norm.
norm. That was a pilot scheme of, before me there was a minister from Aruba who was in the Netherlands cabinet, Faustina Frank.
Okay.
She brought that because she saw it too. She brought in, as a matter of fact, she brought in some Frisian from Friesland, top people who fought for that in Friesland. But then, you remember Friesland, even though they have their own language, they are still within the whole Dutch culture, context, and so forth. But she applied that. She brought that in. It was a good step, meaning well, etc. But indeed, it should not have stopped, as you rightly said. It should not have stopped there.
Because I am a child of that particular program, because with Dr. McKay, I became with 6 other, Solange Duncan, Gabrielle Marlin. We were the first students to go to study in the English language, because we had a transition, and we were bringing in people from, I think, Barbados at the time, and then the St. Martin wanted their own, so there's in 1975 is where I got an opportunity to get a scholarship, and they were looking, they were even trying to send us to Barbados. Eventually we went to St. Thomas, and that's the way I end up there. And I want to know now, I'm seeing that the Dutch school wants to go back completely to Dutch, and if they have an English school, they want to go completely in English. And
no, I would like to see that our people, you're carrying a Dutch passport. As long as we're not independent, and I have a totally different idea about that, but that's not what I'm here. We have to still get some form of Dutch. So in the English schools, I would like to see that the kids get proper way of getting Dutch, not necessarily as a second language, but a good way to learn Dutch.
To a proficiency level.
Yeah, proficiency level. Because we expect, for example, of immigrants who want to get naturalized, that they sit a test in Dutch, which I personally think is ridiculous. When I was in the naturalization committee, it was important for you to know what's happening in this country, and etc., and you know how to know English. But if you're having, for example, a Chinese or Vietnamese learning Dutch in St. Martin, you don't hear it. They pass and everything else, but that one thing, etc. When our own people don't know it, so you know, I would like to see some proficiency, yes, in the Dutch language, but don't forget to, most of the kids, or several of the kids, going to Holland have the opportunity to study in English in Holland. You know, my kids, I didn't talk the talk only. I am very, very fluent in Dutch. As you know, I'm an interpreter, translator,
Right,
etc.
you're fluent in many languages.
Many languages. But I made a point to send my children to English schools.
Okay.
From the beginning. Against some of my own family here in St. Martin. They said, but you went Holland, and why are you doing this to the children? No, if I'm going to advocate mother tongue education, I have to, and I see what it's done to the children, I too have to, you know, walk the walk.
Walk the walk, yeah.
And my 3 children, at one point in their life, lived in Holland.
Okay.
And they survived in Holland.
Right.
Yes, sir? Because there were schools in the given providing education in the English language.
Right.
Because the Dutch at this point in time are trying to be, where education is concerned, very international. So they're attracting children from all over. They're just from all over, from Africa, from all over. And once you're there, you're in a Dutch environment, you will pick up the Dutch.
Oh, I have noticed. I have worked at Milton Peters College now for 25 years. And I noticed that recently Milton Peters turned to the English program of the CXC. What do you think about that?
Oh, they did?
Yes.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
really?
it is spreading, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And some schools feel threatened, like Milton Peters was the Dutch school.
Yes,
now
yes.
Milton Peters is going to take over a piece of the pie.
Yes.
You know?
But it has to, because I remember one of my nieces, you might know her, Eloina Richardson.
Okay, and then know the name.
Yeah, she used to spend the weekends with me sometimes. And both of us are readers. We love to read. So she would be in one bed reading, I'm in the next bed reading. When we finish, we've got to do some cooking and washing up the dishes and so forth. So I would tell her, so tell me what you read. She has a Dutch book. She had to read a Dutch book for school. So tell me what you read. I said, and tell to me in Dutch. En toen cannot express herself. I said, okay, so tell this to me now in English, what you read. And she loved to read. She would read the book. Man, she rattled it off. She knew exactly. And that kind of thing I did also when I was minister. I would go to different schools, and even in Bonaire, tell the children, tell me what happened yesterday afternoon. Tell it to me in Dutch. Yeah. Mime without words. The child could express themselves better miming it than to sit in Dutch. Okay, tell it to me what you mean to now. And then it's come out fluent. So that should tell you something. It's not that kids are not dumb, the kids are not stupid, but the kids have been hampered by having them to study. I mean, it's ridiculous if you hear in St. Martin and a child is learning Spanish from Dutch.
That is true.
Or French from Dutch. This is not right.
And based on the results of my research that I did with my thesis, when I came out, I think I gathered it from my teaching experience, because in 1981 when I started teaching, everybody was concerned. Here comes back one of the first students
yes, I remember
that studied in English, and I went against the law. I was supposed to do elementary ed, and my professor told me, hey, you're smart. You could speak English, Papiamento, Dutch, Spanish, and all my mathematics grade, because at the time, wiskunde was a thing that was already integrated in St. Martin. So when I went to the Virgin Islands, they had algebra alone and trigonometry alone. And so when we started getting the integrated math in college, I used to get pure hundreds. So my advantage. So my professor said, you're very smart, you should also do math. When I asked the department here to do, to change over to math, they said no. So I did elementary ed and mathematics. And the late Camille Bailey always looked out for me, and he said, I will see that you get a job. And on the I graduated maybe the 22nd of May, and on the 24th of May, I had a job at Milton Peters College as a math teacher. And then they wonder, how would I teach? How much Dutch he remembered? But what happened, I explained all the concept in Dutch, and I gave the explanation in
English,
English,
yes.
and the students found it very easy to
Yes,
understand. So
yes.
when they did the test,
Yes.
they did the test very, very good. And I was promoted at Milton Peters College to go to Suriname, to go to Aruba and Curacao, and even be gecommitteerde bij Van Drie
For math.
for math at the time, because I did it in both languages. And what I'm noticing today is that a lot of individuals are interested in English, but like you said, because of the immigration, brought back a deeper sense,
Yes.
a deeper meaning
Yeah.
to use the Dutch language.
Right.
So it is important that
But you see, I've heard a member of Parliament, Speaker of the House, Speaker of Parliament, Mrs. Sarah Scott Williams, saying that right now they got the monies to do research and to get English to be the main official language of this country. I have fought to have English next to Dutch. That was one of my fights, to have English as official language next to Dutch. So what is happening now? Soon they cannot force people anymore to do the exams only in the Dutch language.
Okay.
You can now have a right to do it also in English. As a matter of fact, I used to be once upon a time on the Naturalization Committee. It was never like that. But okay, it changed up. It's okay.
isn't it somewhere in the law that the civil servants should be able to address you in Spanish, English, or Dutch?
No, not Spanish. English or Dutch.
English or Dutch?
Dutch or English.
I thought it was
But-
Spanish also.
No, as far as I know.
Okay,
And I never really fought for that. I have had a document language policy in St. Martin and in the Antilles. I have recognized at the time the use of Spanish and Papiamento, which got me in trouble with people.
Yeah,
here again.
Papiamento. Maybe I'm
Because
mixing
you-
it up with Papiamento.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, maybe it's Papiamento.
Yeah,
Because
of
at the time when
Curacao.
I was believing in Netherlands Antilles, I thought that since so many people here come from that side, let us all learn some more Papiamento, and the Spanish. Even to some extent, my focus is more on Spanish than on French, although we are on an island from the French side, because there's so many people here.
True.
Not only those Dominicanos coming in now, but many of our parents were born in Santo Domingo, Cocolos, and are back here, and so forth. So, from that point of view, we're looking at it in the total historical, cultural context.
That's
that
true.
point of view.
But I had a question from day one. When you mentioned you were born in Aruba, and you were questioning whether you're from St. Martin, yes or not. People question whether you're from St. Martin, yes or not. I tell people I was born in Aruba, but I'm from St. Martin. Because my mother had it ding dong in Aruba because she was English thinking kukabay wire, you know what I mean? And she was always English because she spoke English.
Yeah.
The Papiamento were minimal,
Yeah.
so they consider her
Yeah.
from St. Martin, period. They didn't
Right.
ask a question,
Right.
nothing.
Right.
So when I came back here, it was no doubt I'm a St. Martiner. When I go French Quarter, the whole of French Quarter, my family, I go Colombia, I go
Yeah,
all of
my
these things.
family,
I
yeah, right,
identify where my family from. Now that I grow up, even worse. My father, mother from Anguilla. My mother from Anguilla.
Yes,
Hey,
Well, that issue played especially a role when my daughter
yeah.
was running for Miss World St. Martin.
Okay.
And then some people made it clear to her she's not a real St. Martiner. Her mother is from Aruba, her father is from Nigeria, and she's a real St. Martiner. I mean, Ife, who has contributed so much to this society in all kind of forms and fashion. And I remember once too, a cousin of mine, a very dear cousin of mine, told me, if I go on a list, he'll never vote for me because I didn't really grow up here.
Well,
So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, but it's okay. I'm not making an issue of it. It's fine. I could have got a job also working in Aruba because the Arubans wanted me to come back.
yeah.
Okay, the Arubans, as a matter of fact, Betty Cruz is the one who saw potentials in me and was sending me forward. And the Arubans wanted me to come back, especially after I did research on Papiamento and I used to teach Papiamento. They wanted me to be back.
Yes.
But-
One thing with the Arubians, even
Yes.
after 1986,
Yes.
and I go to Aruba, They would just tell me, come in. They would never ask any kind of question or I asked any kind of, I felt like a Narubian, but because of my identity in St. Martin, because of the contribution I've been making, because in Aruba, I don't know where all the corners were, because my brother, he died now, John C.ARENDELL, he said he can't identify himself with St. Martin because he don't know where the hanchis are. In Aruba, he could find all the hanchis. You understand? But
that's a good way of looking at
it. With
it.
me, I couldn't find them. I could
Yes.
find where my father living with this person. And then when he died, the whole chapter in Aruba closed out.
Oh, okay.
You understand?
Yes.
So St. Martin now,
Right.
in 1969, Linda, when I walked French Quarter, every single household knew me.
Yes.
Olive boy, Olive boy. And I don't know them, but they were in Aruba and they came back. You understand?
Yes.
So in educating our kids, we need to educate them also about where they're from.
Where they're from and who
You
they are.
understand?
Yeah,
Because
I feel a bit sorry that I really didn't look more into my grandmother from Anguilla side, because Ife goes a lot to Anguilla to do several, work with the people out there, and she not belong. And now I'm saying, wait, but my grandmother had died young, so I never really knew her. And now I'm finding out that Josephine Brooks was a sister of May Brooks, and that they somewhere in Stony Ground, I think I have family. And I've been going so often to Anguilla, I never really checked it out because she died long before I was born.
well, I really didn't know my Anguilla roots, but thanks to Ruth Elias, I realized that I went to school with first cousins. And people in St. Martin, some of them, because they're right here, you're talking to them, because I go back, you call the Pantoflet, I'm family to the Pantoflet, the Yorks and all of those people. It's a whole big, and then when you go to Maria Libera Peters, all those Peters, Rumu, we come, the same off of the Pantoflet and all of those things when you did the research. I didn't do the research, but when I
had started, I had started doing research, oral tradition research with the late Emilio Wilson. But when the hurricane had hit, I've lost
a lot
my
of
stuff, and I didn't have the energy anymore to restart it and so forth. I started to do things with him, and I thought I'll come around to the rest.
Well, that's a nice topic to get into, but it would take a lot of debating because it started in the Virgin Islands, and who's a Virgin Islander? Because they were talking about how can you become governor if you're not a Virgin Islander, and when you look at the makeup of the U.S. Virgin Island, it was bought by the Americans in 1917, so hardly anybody.
That's right.
Well, from there, but it made up a lot of Antiguans and right, Dominicans. Prominent in those islands. But we're talking about education.
Yes, we're going back to education, yes. Yes.
The problem with the language of instruction, it has affected a lot of students, and we find that a lot of students go into vocational education.
I have a serious problem with that. Because when you look at the Sundale School, for example, and I know I'm going to get flack for this, but at this age, I don't care anymore. I didn't care before anyway. Have you ever seen, and I'm not going to be racist with this, a white child go to Sundale School?
I saw one or two.
Yeah. Our children are labeled so young and pushed on to, and then the vocation, and I'm not saying it's a bad school, because I am so proud of this Haitian girl. I forgot her name now, but she was going to school, and when they would ask her what she wants to become, she said a doctor. And the class and the teacher laughed at her and sent her to Sundale School. She went from there to Methodist College. I met her afterwards in Sabre doing her becoming a doctor in medicine, and afterwards she was a doctor in medicine. You see, the child was very determined. So some people see that as a write-off. It's not a write-off. I've seen very good cooks come out of that school. When I was in Holland, the kids that go to Mondrian, and some of them come up, oh my God, they're top chefs. So it's not a write-off. And not everybody has to become a doctor okay? Because some people have it in their head, the best thing to become is a lawyer, a doctor, and etc. But a lot of chefs make more money than doctors
That's
and
true.
lawyers, you know.
That's true.
Yes, and have more respect, you know,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So it's not, vocational education is no, forget about it. We have to understand vocational education is necessary, and we have to get out of our head that everybody wants to become and work in government. That story of you have to work in government have to stop. When you get a scholarship or study financing to go study, you don't sit down and wait and say government must employ me, and then you're upset because you can't get a job. How many people does government can employ? Right now, in my opinion, government is overfloated. Several people should be gone out of there.
That is true.
You understand what I'm saying? And that's going to bring me to my latest topic, which I learned from my daughter, the entrepreneurship side.
Right. and because when we talk vocational education,
Yes.
right now in Germany, in France, in Holland, the employability of the student is through entrepreneurship.
Exactly.
Through,
I was coming to that.
through
Vocational education.
vocational, it
without
stops in those places.
entrepreneurship- Without entrepreneurship, is no vocational education.
It stops in those places.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly,
because
exactly.
there is a way to get the people employed. There's an incentive through the apprenticeship program because you're getting on-the-job training.
Exactly.
And if you excel there, the people glad to take you on because you are learning what they need.
Right.
Take a Harvard student, for example. The student that might want to work 1 or 2 years, the guy say, well, I got to train him all over again.
Yes, because they don't have.
But when they come out to the vocational sector, they train them because they have to do on-the-job training. So today, rapidly, vocational education is becoming one of the top programs in the region.
Right, and it has to be, and it has to have two very important components. Entrepreneurship skills, entrepreneurship education, to teach them to be creative, innovative, and also look at the challenges of the 21st century. Do not forget the impact that technology has on the world, and that has to be very important in education. I was reading a research a report done by the World Economic Forum, and I heard it again when I went to the ICT symposium, ICT governance symposium that was hosted by our governor.
Okay.
And they said there, 60-something%, I think it's 61 or 65, doesn't matter, but it's 60, let us say 61, let's take it lower, of children entering primary education right now will not be able to, there will be no jobs for the existing jobs that they are now, will be, some of them will be gone, and jobs that do not now exist will be existing by the time they finish.
Of course,
so
because of IT.
The technology, so we have to put very serious attention to that aspect.
And so
when the kids finish, that they are not obsolete before they can even start properly.
And our teachers have to.
And the teachers have
to get up to par because right now I'm going to debate with one of my colleagues that should I put 2 qualified teachers within a classroom just because one does not know about IT? I think on their own they should have picked up that subject.
They had to do something.
Yeah, because we know it is the in thing. You don't go in a classroom to teach with chalk and blackboard anymore.
No, the way how we were taught is out of it. It's obsolete. As a matter of fact, where IT is concerned, many children, little kids, no more about
I tell you the truth. When I want something done, I said, Daniela, come, fix that for daddy.
But look, I say, my kids give me a smartphone, they give me a smart TV, something, the smart watch. I have it on today. My kids have that. but I don't know not much, you know.
Yeah.
It's my smart children who have been doing all of my stuff for me. You know what I'm saying? So we cannot underestimate, we cannot live anymore like business as usual. We have to be a step ahead. There are going to be so much jobs available in the IT sector, the cybersecurity. There are going to be so much jobs available. So our kids supposed to be looking more at that. Everything. Remember, the companies, the corporations, the businesses are looking at how much money they can make cheap and without disgusting people, right? Telephone operators hardly don't exist anymore.
Right.
Okay. In Holland, not yet here at this airport, but in Holland, the airport, you check in by yourself.
Right.
Okay.
Well, we check it in here now by ourselves
but
too.
at least you're still seeing faces.
Yeah, because
you're still seeing a bit of faces. You know, I used to be a little upset in Holland. I said, but they're losing the human touch. But this is where we are going. I was discussing again with Ife. I bounced off things on her. She was telling me, Mom, I said, we have hospitality. You think they're going to get IT? She said, Mom, robots, they already have robot maids and so on. They ain't discussing, they're coming on time.
Because they are already true.
And so we have to, besides, push vocational. Do not forget the part of the entrepreneurial skills that would be needed, no matter how you turn it and twist it. And do not forget the part of technology. We got to start to be ahead. So the school system, I have not really been in it for a while, do not know exactly what's happening there, but the school system really should put attention to, hey, look with vision. We have to start to change some stuff and so on. You don't have no reason to employ 2 people for one class. That is super ridiculous.
I fully agree with you, but one of the things that is lacking here is facilities. And the Dutchman would say, het is een dure grap in order to have vocational education. Because vocational education comes with an assimilation classroom within the school system, plus the fact that you have to go out there and do on-the-job training. So
the Dutchman could sit and it is een dure grap to have it. But it is a nog duurder grap to have a bunch of unemployed people who might end up on the block. And so on. It is more expensive, you know, understand? So he could say, yes, it's a very expensive joke, but it's even more expensive when you don't have that education, because then you're having kids drop out, kids on the block, kids doing all kind of stuff and so forth, which will be more expensive and so forth. We need to get the kids to be not only employable, but to be contributors to the society, and to also teach them lifelong learning. I am always learning something, you know. And they have to keep up, because even in IT, my son is an IT specialist, he's an IT administrator. Even IT, you have to keep going to be ahead of
that is true. My son is into that, and he's teaching me all kind of names. He's a vlogger, blogger, this and that, and all of those type of things. So everything that basically he saw me doing, he wanted to be an actor. He put everything together. And he is into marketing, so he did one whole thing. So he travels throughout the world. So today he's in Texas, tomorrow he's in Brazil. He goes all over.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he does, he keep up with the latest development.
Got to keep up with the latest
and
development.
the latest equipment and all of those type of things. So in St. Martin, one of our shortcomings with the introduction of vocational education, I don't think we got the proper technology, the proper facilities, and that is what is lacking in St. Martin, that we're going into the programs and to take a guy off the block, for example, the Dutchman would give you money for that program, but our basic problem now is we don't maintain that program.
We don't maintain it.
You know, we start the program.
You see the NIPA there? Before NIPA, I had devised SMITH, St. Martin Institute of Technology and Hospitality. That was came out of my brain. And I saw that because when I was in Tallahassee, I used to go to Tallahassee a lot. I was also the broker for the Tallahassee agreement.
Okay.
And when I sent Mr. Vernon Richards to Tallahassee to see how that goes and so forth, because I was so impressed with what they're doing out there. But every time I see the NIPA up in arms and negatively in the media, it hurts me. because kids who are off the block are getting confused with a lot of confusion in the school, and it shouldn't be. It should be that you want to go to school, there's no confusion, it's a place where you're going to learn to become somebody, and so forth, and not that today is your teacher, tomorrow they're gone. It really hurts me when I see that. I do hope that now it's going to get more on track. I see that Mr. Rogers has gone in there.
Yeah.
I do hope it gets on track and so forth, and things get put in order, because it is so valuable. But it has to have also the right environment, the right atmosphere to keep up and to keep the kids motivated to come back, to keep doing what they have to do. It's a very valuable program.
It is a valuable program for St. Martin, and once it is introduced, we have the right facilities, and if you know the history, going way back when we at the Milton Peters College had developed the master plan to have a polytech.
Yes, I know the history. Yes, I was involved there too. Yes, that's right.
And we lost that massive, and
you know, we have to get serious, because we can't no longer. This is no time to be hanging out. We got to get serious. We put something in place, keep it up, and make it better, and stop playing around with it. You're right. We had a polytech, and afterwards we end up with a Smith.
And that's
and
why
after that went up, that's was shelf. I don't know why. And then we get the NEPA, and you know, hopefully that we're moving somewhere.
one last thing. Finally, we have reached the point where compulsory education has been introduced.
Awesome,
the problem is that we have lack of facilities, we have lack of teachers, we have many things that we don't have for the proper completion of the introduction of compulsory education. What do you think that we can do for it to change?
You know, I was minister in 1986 when I started to work on that law, compulsory education, not realizing at the time the impact it would have on St. Martin with the total influx of illegal immigrants. But just think, every child has a right to education. You know, I never really look at that other part properly, maybe. And then working as minister in Curacao, most of my advisors are from Curacao. They didn't have that impact as serious as St. Martin. I am surprised right now that after all of these years, with the introduction of compulsory education, that there are not enough teachers. Then you have to become creative. Then you have to become creative and put aside the law about a classroom should only have 23 children, but be creative in a bigger classroom. You have to be creative. I'm surprised to hear that we do not have enough teachers. Then I think we should invest more, and I was so encouraged when I was at the graduation of the University of St. Martin to see so many of the young people into the education field. I think that's very good, but we do need to have also, and I talked to a few of them, teachers going into the managerial part of education, because a lot of teachers become managers of schools, of heads of schools, good teachers, but bad heads of schools because they're bad leaders, bad managers.
Right.
So I'm happy to see our own now doing more in education, but we have to send more people of us in education and learn alternative ways of teaching the children. So this will not be too much of an issue.
That is very true, and I am a proponent that government sponsor much more programs in the educational field. Now we're getting into an area that needs to be discussed for a very long time, because one of the biggest problems that we have now is that with the introduction of compulsory education, we need teachers, and with the language of instruction being in English, at the last moment, we have to hire a lot of teachers from the Caribbean. And of course, they need immigration papers, and that's another problem.
Regrettably, too many teachers have run around here.
It is a big thing, and maybe I have to get you back on for us to talk about those things, to talk more about how we can integrate the English properly so that we get our teacher better prepared for them. I've been given the sign that we only have 1 more minute, so I'll give you the last word. Linda,
Well,
I'm glad that you have made a great contribution and you continue to do it.
Well, well, what would be my last word? I didn't get to talk about University of St. Martin. I am, co-founding.
We're going to get you back.
On that.
We're going to get you back.
And so many other stuff and so forth. I used to, was involved with the kids in Holland that I groomed and make sure that it was successful, and so on and so forth. Anyway, right now I am retired.
Okay.
but I cannot be retired. I am still working very much as an interpreter translator, also for the law enforcement agencies and the court and so forth, and still doing all kind of stuff. In the next few weeks, I'll be out in Statia giving classes on parenting skills to people over there, and the next thing, one of my things that I do is I travel a lot. I just came back from China.
Okay.
And from Cuba. And we should learn something from Cuba. Cuba integrates very well sports, culture, and education. And I know that at one point, Rhoda Arendelle was very much interested in that, but we should look at that. That is one of the ways to also get a wholesome human being.
Ladies and gentlemen, with Linda, Dr. Linda Richardson here, we need a lot more from her. So definitely I'm going to invite you for the next program to continue this conversation. I believe it was a very good one, and we'll continue next week on the Monday morning show. I am Roberto Celestino Arendell.
From Monday to Friday for your Caribbean 98 update.
Anybody seen Johnny? Yeah, he's in his car. What he's doing there? It's 2 o'clock. He's listening to 98.1, The Bottom Line with Romaine LaVille every Friday. Really? Let me get my keys. Hi, this is Romaine LaVille, host of The Bottom Line. Tune in every Friday at 2 p.m. on 98.1 Pearl FM, where no topics are off limits. Trust me. Just trust me. Why?
'Cause that's the bottom line.
Because